We're going to start in a couple minutes. So if you're out in the lobby, hustle up and make your way in. The rest of you enjoy your chit chat, and we'll light this candle in a couple more minutes. Hey, Raj. That's not working. Let's do that. What's up? Oops, sorry. Hannah and I are going to have a conversation. So good evening. I think everybody out in the lobby has made their way into the worship center. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this spring's State of the Roof meeting. Yay! We hold these State of the Roof meetings twice a year, as a reminder, once in the spring, once in the fall. We do these to do very important church/family business at the spring, State of the Roof meeting, we review the previous year's expenses, and we look forward to the upcoming year and discuss budgets and anticipated expenses and review some offerings. And then at the fall State of the Roof meeting, we elect elders and talk about leadership. And at either State of the Roof meeting, we just talk about important things going on here at the church. There's always important stuff going on here, and we want to make sure that you know about it and that you know what, I think I'm getting some feedback, how you can help and how you can be a part of that. And we're going to do that tonight. We're going to talk about our long-held plans to plant another congregation in the St. Louis area. Jacob Pralo, like Hollow, is going to be up here to discuss those plans. That's the first time he introduced himself. He said it's Jacob Pralo, like Hollow. So that just kind of logged into my head. So Jacob Pralo, like Hollow. He's going to talk about our plans to plant another congregation. Jason, are you getting a little bit of feedback? Is anybody else hearing a little bit of feedback? Okay, we've got a significant percentage of people who are hearing feedback. And then we are also going to open it up, as we always do, for questions and answers at the end of the meeting, just to give you all the chance to find out whatever you need to find out about what's going on here at Rooftop. So whether you are a longtime rooftopper or a relative newcomer, we are very glad that you are here to participate in Rooftop's family business. Couple housekeeping notes before we begin, though. First of all, if you are on the Rooftop voting roster, we hope that you checked in the lobby and picked up your ballot. The Rooftop voting roster is that group of people that get to vote on stuff around here. It's really easy to be on the voting roster. You just have to be 16 years of age. You have to have attended Rooftop as a Christian for 6 months prior to the meeting, and you have to attend 1 out of every 2 State of the Roof meetings. If you don't attend 1 out of every 2, then you get politely removed from the roster, but it's really easy to reapply. In fact, Kelsey Jackson has some voter application cards that you can fill out if you arrived and found out that you had been removed from the roster. Secondly, thank you to Aaron Schragi, once again, who has coordinated childcare for us tonight. We've got some Rooftop college kids back in the education wing watching our little kids. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, volunteers. Actually, we're paying them, so thank you, paid servants. Just a reminder, we need to be constantly aware of this. The Rooftops people work so hard over there on the other side of the building to provide care and instruction and childcare, so I hope that you're grateful for all that they do. To kick us off this evening, I'm going to invite Paul Colbert up to the stage to open us in prayer. Paul is a relative newcomer to the elder team. He was elected last fall. Just so you know, there was actually another Paul on the team before Paul Colbert. Paul Mueller has been here at Rooftop longer. So we actually recently voted to change Paul Colbert's name to avoid confusion. So may I introduce you to Pavel Colbert.
There you go. Thank you, sir. Will you bow with me, please? Most heavenly and gracious Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for blue skies and Blues wins and Cardinals wins and kidney donors. And thank you for the people that have gathered here tonight to hopefully through this process be able to find ways to continue to grow your kingdom. I also ask that you, through your Holy Spirit, guide these discussions over the budget and especially for church planting, and especially lay on our hearts any way that we can help. Be with us as we leave tonight and be with us until we meet again. I ask all these things in your most holy and precious name. Amen.
If you're wondering why Pavel is randomly praying for kidney donors, Colleen Echterhoff, a sister in Christ here at Rooftop, recently donated her kidney this past week to a recipient who is doing very well. I don't think Colleen was planning on... Oh, Colleen, yeah. It's our kidney donor Wonder Woman over there. So our first item of business is our financial update. Eric Mills is going to join me on the stage. He is our church treasurer. He oversees our very hard-working treasury team, which consists of Faith Renner and Jennifer Mueller, and lots of reliable Sunday morning counters. How many Sunday morning counters do you have on your team? 9 Sunday morning counters. So just as a reminder, one of the things that can really be a problem for lots of churches is poor financial systems, lack of financial accountability, lack of financial transparency. We have great financial systems with lots of accountability. We're always looking for ways to improve our financial systems and accountability. In fact, just within the past couple of months, we saw something that we could improve in, so we did it. Along those lines, Eric's going to share with you our expenses from this past fiscal year, after which he will take questions related to those expenses. We do this not just to check a box, but to open ourselves up to accountability from y'all as to how we are spending God's/your money. So Eric Mills, ladies and gentlemen.
How's that? Good? Matt, it's always a pleasure to be the keynote speaker at the State of the Roof meetings. That's how it was described to me. So, a big group tonight. A lot of you guys have been here before, a lot of you haven't, but I'm going to work my way through some financial matters and then take questions you have. I'm going to go over our income and expenses for the past fiscal year, present our current financial position, and answer your questions. So this financial report covers the time period May 1 of last year, so May 1, 2018, through April 21st of 19, so like less than a week ago. Our fiscal year runs through the end of this month, so these numbers are as accurate as they can be with 1 week to go, is what this comes down to. In your handout, the first thing we'll look at is a page that looks like this. So this involves our offerings for the year. And I'll just show you on there, our monthly average offering income for the year to date is $63,811. And that compares to our budgeted need of the budget that we voted on last year at this time of $71,779. So stated on a weekly basis, we received offerings of $14,306 compared to our need of $16,564. So you can see on that nice little graph, as someone pointed out to me earlier, the black line should be closer to the green line. That's what we want to see in the future. So that is our offering income. Now, regarding money we spent, if you look at the multi-column sheet in your packets, I'll just hit a few things on there. So this shows our actual year-to-date spending versus our budget year-to-date, and then the difference relative to the budget. So the variance is over on the right. Anything that's in black is an area in which we're under budget, so that's good. Anything that's in red is an area that's over budget, so that is not necessarily bad, but that's something we're kind of trying to avoid. So this is self-explanatory. You may have had some time to look at it when you were mingling, and you can certainly take it home with you. But I do want to hit on a few things that kind of jump off the page. So on the first sheet, kind of towards the top, you can see the highlighted row called repairs, and you'll notice that is $26,000 over budget. So the reason for that is we installed a new heating, ventilation, and air conditioning unit in the education wing over here earlier this year. So that was a major expense that wasn't really budgeted for, but not necessarily unanticipated. But that is why that is so far over budget. On the second page, the top of the second page, which I think is on the back of your two-sided sheet, I'll call attention to the missionaries and organizations part. So you'll see that that's $12,000 under budget. So as of April 21st, Jeremy Zilke, who's in charge of missions giving, had given all but about $12,000. Well, since our missions giving is tied directly to our revenue for the year towards our offerings, he doesn't know exactly how much he has to give until after the last week. So he always closes that gap at the very end of the year. But it's not like he's not wanting to give all the money he's supposed to give. He just has to wait and see how much that is. Down towards the bottom of the page, I will show you that Donnie the intern is finally under budget for the year. So I know he's been gone for 3 months. Too bad he's not here to appreciate that. But Donnie is under budget, which is outstanding. And then on payroll, this is maybe getting down in the weeds a little bit, but our payroll process is at the end of the month. This is a projection based on the first 11 months. So we're coming in just under budget on payroll. Now, something new I'm introducing for the year that nobody knows about. You're the first people to know about this. Let me flip to that page. So, as your treasurer, I'm introducing the annual Price is Right Award. And that's given to the ministry leader who comes closest to his or her own budget without going over. So you can see on the first page of this that Jason Herbig, who I'm going to ask to come down, Jason, come on down. Jason Herbig was $16.69 under budget. Yes, here's Jason. Congratulations, buddy. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Wait. Jason is the first ever winner of this award. So for all you ministry leaders out there, this is what you aspire to in the future. Good job. Jason didn't even know this was coming. He might have suspected it.
No.
Do you want to say a few words?
Nobody look at the worship budget line.
Now, I will also state, and this is tragic but true, Colleen Echterhoff gets honorable mention. On a $13,000 budget, she was $1.79 over. Yes. So try, Colleen, try a little harder next year to watch your figures. Okay, and finally, the last page in your packet is called Other Financial Data. This is, the top part of that is our income statement. You can see that our general offering for the year as of, well, until this Sunday, is $729,620. Our budget for the year is $861,000. Let's see, our year-to-date net ordinary income, so our income minus our expenses, is $18,000 under. However, with 1 week to go, that is going to basically be about zero. So our income will basically exactly meet our expenses. The next step's savings budget, which is money the elders build into the budget, basically money to pass forward for the next big project. That was supposed to be $86,000 this year. Since our giving has been under what we budgeted for, we're not going to have that. Below that line is other income and other expenses. So this is money that we brought in, that we spent, that was not part of the budget, but did happen this year. And you can see we spent about $203,000 on building renovations. The overwhelming majority of that was for the new HVAC system for the sanctuary, which you are currently enjoying, I think. Our building mortgage, we started the year at $879,000. We paid off almost $43,000, so we carry a balance of $836,000 into the new year. And then at the bottom of the page, you can see between checking account, money market, and CDs, we have $730,500 in cash reserves. So that brings me to the final part of the presentation, which, backed by popular demand, is called the Treasury Fun Facts. Good, I'm glad we hear a few positive voices there. So thank you. Okay, our fiscal year monthly average offering was $63,811. Last year, it was $67,205. This year, we received 399 donations per month from an average of 196 different donors each month. Last year, that was strikingly close, 394 donations from 191 donors. Our average donation this year was $160.83. Last year was $164.43. Our giving comes in two forms. When we pass the baskets around on Sunday, that's cash and checks. That makes up 68% of our income. 32% of our donations is given online. And we average 11 first-time donors every month. So now that brings me to the random statistics. So two of the many things I love about Rooftop are that we make the absolute most of our financial resources, and we're transparent, as Matt said, about the way in which we spend God's money. As the treasurer, I'm happy to report we run a lean operation and a tight ship. Those who attended State of the Roof in the past know I like to take this opportunity to pragmatically explain that this amazing rooftop product does come at a cost. And I'm aware I'm preaching to the choir because those of you who took the time to be here on Friday night are probably already tithing. So many rooftoppers pour their time and energy into leading and supporting its many ministries, and that feeds the church's energy and fuels its growth. Yet, we live in a fallen world, and it also takes actual dollars to keep the doors open and the lights on. So here are a few examples. For this fiscal year, our average adult attendance is 381 adults. Our cost per adult to operate the church is $167 per month. That's $38.62 per week. Our building mortgage per adult is $18.46 per month. That's $4.26 per week. Our utilities per adult is $1.54 per week. Our cleaning cost is 18 cents per week per adult. Our coffee and bagel or hospitality cost is 50 cents per week per adult. Rooftops is 95 cents per week per adult, and snow removal and groundskeeping is 19 cents per year per adult. And so I will close my remarks with this totally, completely random state of the roof treasury fund fact. On an average Sunday, we collect around $600 in currency in the offering bags. This past Easter, last weekend, we set 2 records. We collected $1,428.88 in cash, which beat the previous record by $300. And we also received the single largest anonymous cash gift on record, which was $340.88. So that is every possible statistic I could possibly give you. So now I'll take your questions. Who has questions? I should have planted a question. Questions? Greg, do you have a question? I was hoping you'd have a question. Mark, do you have a question? Wait, we have a question. Heather has a question. Correct. We're basically going to be zero there after this coming Sunday's offering. That means that the cash we have in the bank is our next step's cash, but we will not have added to that pool this year. Okay, good question, Heather. What else? Yes, Tom. So that's a good question. I assume our average attendance has increased since we moved into the new building. Heather's shaking her head yes. But that's something that actually I've looked into a little bit this year. In the past year to 18 months, we did have a few high-earning families leave the church, but I'm encouraged by the 11 new givers every month. To me, that shows we're maybe spreading the giving base among a broader population who maybe isn't quite so high earning, but I think it's better to have more people giving some. We may be less vulnerable to high earners leaving the church. Any other questions? Okay, I see no other questions. Matt, it's all yours.
Thanks, Eric. Now I want to introduce you to Mark Camille. Mark is on our Rooftop Elder team. He also functions as our budget manager who oversees the budget process. It's a very complicated process. Mark's actually going to take a moment and explain to you the budget process. And after Mark's presentation on this year's upcoming budget, he'll take some questions. If there's any question, I'm going to have some post-budget presentation comments myself. If there's any comment or questions he wants to defer to me, he will do that. So Mark Camille, ladies and gentlemen.
I always hate following Eric because he tends to show me up as far as his appearance is concerned. I got to figure out how to tie a bow tie, I guess. As Matt said, I want to take a second. A lot of you probably have never been around or may not actually have ever heard anybody describe the budget process that we go through here. I want to make sure you all know that it's not strictly, this is done in a room behind closed doors and there's no input from anybody except for the elders. So at the beginning of the process, we actually will we'll send out to all the ministry leaders and to all the staff members budget requests for their respective ministries. And they have the opportunity to send in their requests and, for what they would love to do during the year. And our ministry leaders and staff members are very, very diligent about asking for what they want, but also being reasonable and not just spending all of our money for things that are frivolous. Upon receipt of that, we compile that all into this pretty-looking budget, and we have a couple of iterations of it. We have the Elder Finance Committee look at it and determine whether or not things should be cut, moved around, things along those lines. And then we propose that to the entire Elder team. We typically spend 2 to 3 hours as the Finance Committee talking about it, with another hour or so as an Elder team as a whole. a lot of those conversations revolve around big picture, what do we want to do as a team, and how does this align with that? So having said that, I do want to talk a little bit about the budget. I hope some of you have had a chance to look at it. It's obviously it's in the packet that you were given. I always like to start with the punchline. And the punchline is that our budget this year is $871,000, which is a slight increase over what we budgeted last year. And that represents $16,753 per week and giving of $2,211 per average adult in attendance during the month of March, or $42 a week. This is the downside to this is it's a 17% increase over where we currently are as far as ongoing giving is concerned, $14,306 per week. As I mentioned, our staff and our ministry leaders were very diligent about keeping their expenses relatively reasonable, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have some big initiatives that we're looking forward to, and Matt will address in a little bit. But so as a result, most of the categories this year were relatively flat, and some were even down slightly. There's a couple of exceptions where there were some significant growth in the areas that we view as necessary. In particular, the Rooftops, or the children's ministry, is up about $4,000 year over year. And this has long time been one of Rooftop's most vibrant and active ministries. We have Erin and her leadership team have been very conscientious about their budgets, and they just want to try to do a couple of new things this year, and including some new teaching materials. Events, which Colleen leads, is following up on some great successes this past year in the outreach capacity. In particular, our Summer Fest and our Trunk or Treat were phenomenal. They've asked for an increase, and the elders are proposing that. And then hospitality, which has grown since we've been in this building. That represents the bagels and donuts and coffee and whatever we give out on Sunday mornings. And we have new leadership in there as well, and we're taking some time to, make sure everybody gets fed on Sunday morning and make sure that we do it reasonably. In addition to that, the elders are recommending, included in the packet is a recommendation to increase the salaries of the staff. A couple things to point out within our budget. There are two categories that are percentage of the total budget categories. You'll notice the next step savings, the second to last line on there, is roughly $87,000, and that represents 10% of our budgeted giving. So we always set our budget to include 10% savings. The other line item is actually four separate line items. It's benevolence, and then three giving categories, which are right at the top of the second page. So you've got missionary giving, service missions, and the Mexico mission trip. All told, those represent 12% of our budgeted income for the year. If we don't meet our budget, then we don't give out as much. We do end up at that 12% number every year, and that's monitored and trued up at the end of the year by Jeremy and his Go team. So with that, does anybody have any questions? Andrew. We've been looking to hire a youth intern to replace Donnie, and we are still in the process of that, and this is placeholder for if and when we fill that. Yes, Nikki? I'm going to defer that one to Matt because he's going to have a better answer on that one. Matt is very conscientious about his budget. He will answer it later. Yes, tell me. That would be an error on my part last year. in misbudgeting. So I apologize for misbudgeting last year. It is about a $15,000 difference. There were a couple of tweaks between the time that we had originally talked about the budget and the time that it got finalized, and so the dollar amount of the loan was higher and the rate was different than the original budget. So that's how that ended up being different. This number that's in this year's budget represents the true number that we have been paying. Mhm. Any other questions? Yes. Is Keith here? I don't know the answer to that question. The question was, do we donate the any leftover hospitality stuff at the end of the Sunday? What? Oh, no, Panera does not donate any of theirs. That's a good question. We can look into that. It's not. I don't think it's anything we've ever necessarily considered in the past. So. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over to Matt for a couple of other thoughts. Thanks.
So first of all, Nikki, thank you for asking. Each staff member has different ministry priorities. Some pastors are expected to spend a little more time discipling people, members, leaders. Some are expected to spend a little more time in their study. That's why those numbers are very fluid. I don't spend a lot of money going to conferences. I find them hard to get to. So everybody just kind of requests their own levels, and the elders review those as necessary. So, and I am a cheap date. Okay, we are going to vote to approve that budget in a moment, but before we do that, I actually want to take a chance to make a few budget-related pastoral comments. As you can tell, the elders continue to be optimistic, even aggressive, on our budgeted expenses for the upcoming year. We have, as Mark said, we have increased our anticipated budgeted expenses from $861,000 last year. This year, that's about a $10,000 increase. We have done this even though, as Mark also acknowledged, our income has remained somewhat flat, even a little bit declining. Last year's average monthly offering was $63,000. This is about $8,000 a month less than last year's monthly budget and $8,700 less than this year's upcoming monthly budget. Now, if you're confused by numbers, here is a very crude diagram of what the elders have done. Budget, slightly higher. Income below, slightly downer. So this is basically what the elders have done. Slight increase on the budget with an income that's below the budget going slightly down. Now, you might wonder if this was wise, which would be an intelligent question to ask. And I want to reassure you that the elders who are in charge of this budget process are very intelligent people. And they did this for a few reasons. First, these expenses are very important items. I mean, this is kingdom business that we want to make sure gets done. We cut things from budgeted requests, but we really do try to prioritize the important work that money needs to, God's work requires money. And in order to get some of these things done, we have to make sure that the budget stays at a certain level. Secondly, as Eric pointed out earlier, and I hope you caught this, we always do a good job of watching our expenses. Our expenses consistently come in lower than our anticipated budgeted expenses. We're going to be basically flat this past year. So we're basically paying for everything that we wanted to do, aside from what we wanted to save. So we're not going to save any additional money this year. We're basically going to be able to pay for everything that we spent. And thirdly, the elders really do operate by faith here. Faith that God will give us the resources to do the work that he has assigned us to do. Now, whether or not you all approve of the logic of this, that will be your decision when you vote to approve or disapprove the budget, if you think that this is a wise choice. But that's at least the elders' thinking behind it. Now, there are several things that this next step budget does not include, though, things that we hope to get to this next year, or is this not? What? Turn my pack? Okay, I've turned my pack. Can I do that? I was interpreting the word turn in a different way. I was turning it. The word on is important there. Okay, there are several things that this budget does not include, things that we really do hope to get to this next year or in the next couple years. And these are not reflected in the budget that has been presented to you. We call these things next step items. The budget, as you can tell, it's more of an annual expense budget. Doesn't always include special expenses, which go beyond it. And in particular, there are 4 next step pieces that we want to get to, if not in the next year, in the next few years. I want to take a moment just to describe some of them to you. First, we want to launch Rooftop 2.0. We're going to talk about this in a moment, but we are getting going in the starting of another congregation with Pastor Jacob Pralo Laikalo at the helm. This is going to be a big effort. It's going to require some money. We want to help pay for launch expenses. We want to make sure all the startup costs are covered. We want to help make up the difference on operating expenses for the first couple of years. Now, the exact cost of launching Rooftop 2.0 won't be known for a while because we don't really know what the giving capacity is of that launch team. The amount that the launch team, the group of people who are going to help start the church, we don't know what they're going to be capable of giving, so we don't really know what we're going to have to be responsible for. But according to our best number crunching estimates, we are guessing intelligently that getting Rooftop 2.0 up and running is going to cost us all in about $200,000 to $225,000. So that's next step number 1. Also, we want to purchase the adjacent lot for parking next door. Have you heard, as you've heard, we're in negotiations to purchase Phil's, the old barbecue joint next door. We are nearing finalization of a contract with them to purchase that lot. It got slowed down recently by the death of the owner. So pray for Pete and his family. We weren't able to finalize that contract. That won't impede it. It'll just slow it down a little bit. The family who now owns the lot is still committed to selling it to us. So we have an agreement in principle. We just have yet to sign the contract. If we do this, this will give us access to Gravois, which would be a good thing. And it'll give us 60, 70 additional spots. 50 to 60 additional spots, which will be very helpful on high-capacity Sundays. Again, this is not budgeted, but all in the cost over there for purchasing the lot, tearing down the building, and converting it to a parking lot is going to be about $225,000 to $250,000. Thirdly, we want to install an elevator or a lift. One of the very unfortunate parts of this building, which we are so blessed to have, right, is that the lower level is not wheelchair accessible. This means that anything going on in the community center, any youth, any kids' activities downstairs are inaccessible to what seems, at times, to be a growing population of wheelchair users here at Rooftop. Now, we have worked with an engineering firm. We have plans on how to do it, where to do it. We know what it would look like. We have not pulled the trigger on it. It would not be cheap. It's about $150,000, and that's actually a very affordable version of adding an elevator or a lift. Fourthly, we want to hire additional staff. As Rooftop continues to grow, we'd like to be able to staff up to accommodate more visitors, serve more people. We had over 750 people here at our Easter service this past Sunday. We want to be able to serve them and disciple them and help them grow as Christians.
We continue to look for a youth intern to replace Donnie. We are actively soliciting applications. We've interviewed someone, didn't really work out there, but we continue to receive applications. Spread the word. We really are in the market for a youth intern. Additionally, when Jacob leaves to lead Rooftop 2.0, we would love to be able to replace his position with another associate pastor, or even better, another church planting pastor. We don't know how feasible that's going to be, depending on how much money he takes with him. So we'll just have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Given the unknowns associated with that expense, we're not sure how much that would cost to staff up, so let's just call it a baseline $75,000. So those are 4 large things that we'd like to see happen here at Rooftop. All things not included in the budget. None of them are included in our expected budget for our upcoming year, which, as a reminder, is below what our current giving can support. So if we want to get any of those 4 things done, how are we going to get them done? Well, this is why we have a savings account. Due to diligent savings, we have about, as Eric pointed out, we have about $730,000 in our Next Step savings account. We have socked this money away very diligently over the years to pay for the next steps we want to take when we are able to take them. We have used this Next Step money to buy that old building, this new building, hire staff. We just used $200,000 to upgrade this building and to even buy this new HVAC system. We cannot spend all our savings, of course. Dave Ramsey would warn us against that. He would recommend that we keep 6 months' worth of expenses in our savings account. We actually think that's a pretty good benchmark. That would be about $300,000 for us in our savings account, which leaves us with, if we want to spend it, $430,000 to spend. So the 4 big steps that we want to take total $650,000 to $750,000. We have, if we want to spend it, $430,000 to spend. This doesn't fit into this. Again, I'm using the most simple hand gestures to explain this, too big for this. So what do? Well, we have to prioritize. And after very diligent discussion, prayer, even some arguments, the elders have identified the 2 things we need to get done right now. We need to buy the lot next door. Adjacent properties do not come up for sale very often. If that becomes available, you have to buy it. Now, if you're talking with the people who own it, do not tell them that we have to buy it. That would completely destroy our negotiating position. Just tell them that we might be interested if the price is right. Tell them that. But we need to do that. It's a priority for us. Secondly, we need to get Rooftop 2.0 up and running. It's been a long-held dream. We have the opportunity to get it going. It's the reason we exist as a church. We need to get it up and running. Now, with the lot next door and with getting Rooftop 2.0 up and running, we're at about what our savings will allow us to spend at about $425,000 to $475,000. Now, what about the elevator? What about the additional staff? We need those things too. Are we just out of luck? I hope not, and I actually don't think so, because here's the thing. I have absolutely, completely, no doubt in my mind that if God's people here at Rooftop were giving to their capacity, we could do both those things quite easily. We could do all 4 of these things without dipping into our savings at all. I am convinced that God's people already have what God's work requires. We just need to release it to the location that God has designated we use it. I mean, it's very tempting to think that over the years, with somewhat flat offering incomes, that the people of Rooftop have already kind of, here I go with the hand signals again, have already hit our capacity, our giving capacity. I mean, our income has remained kind of flat for the past couple of years, and it's very easy to conclude that we've maybe already hit our ceiling there, as honestly some of the elders have already concluded. Well, maybe the people of Rooftop are just kind of gived out. I refuse to believe that. Mid-South St. Louis County isn't the richest part of the world, but it's a fairly well-off area, and I think God has already blessed us with everything we need to get done. What needs to get done here? Elevators, staff, parking lots, church plants. We just need to release it to where it's supposed to go. Now, how does this impact you? Honestly, that will be a conversation for you and the Holy Spirit to have. I'm also aware of the fact that the people here are already, for the most part, giving and sacrificing for the kingdom. It's the people who aren't here who need to hear this. That's why we're doing our best to talk more honestly and openly and consistently about matters of giving on Sunday morning. We really don't want to hit anybody over the head, but we want to keep the need front and center and remind them what the Bible says about giving. But that does not let you off the hook. When it comes to paying for important stuff in the church, stuff like elevators, stuff like additional staff, the solution here is remarkably simple. More people need to spend less and give more. That's how we pay for an elevator. That's how we pay for a youth pastor. More people need to spend less and give more. And while there are exceptions to this, I have not really met a lot of people who are incapable of spending less and or giving more. And the elders and the staff really understand this, and we're trying to lead the way. We have staff and elders who are upping their tithe to help us take the next steps we want to take. We have staff members who turned down raises this year to save the church some money that can go towards our next steps. The elders cut all kinds of important budget requests that we hope might add up over time. Very important stuff that we said we could do that, but we really need to save right now. The staff continues to be disciplined in spending so we don't waste resources. I don't know if you've ever seen other churches' budgets, but our staff does a really good job of whittling down our expenses to what they need to be so that we can do what we need to do without being excessive. We continually ask fourth floor candidates, elder candidates, deacon candidates. We ask them what their philosophy is on giving. We hold them accountable to what we believe about giving. We are just not ashamed or embarrassed to challenge God's people here at Rooftop to be as generous as they can possibly be, given what we understand about the generosity of God in giving us his son, Jesus Christ, on the cross for us. We're just not embarrassed to challenge God's people to give with that in mind. We live in the richest country in the history of the world. If we want an elevator, we can afford an elevator. If we want a youth pastor, we can hire a youth pastor. It's just going to take lots of us pooling our resources together to actually get these things done. So in sum, if all goes well, we have a very good chance of making our budget this upcoming year. We have enough savings to pay for the two priorities we've identified, purchasing the lot next door, getting Rooftop 2.0 up off the ground. The people of Rooftop have the financial potential to pay for additional staff and an elevator for our wheelchair guests. If the elders see the people of Rooftop coming through here, we will consider taking these steps. Honestly, though, it's just going to be up to you. And your brothers and sisters in Christ who aren't here, but you can lead the way. You just have to decide how much you want to make this happen, and we can make it happen. So with all that being said, does anybody have any further questions on anything budget related? If not, we're going to go ahead and take our vote. So any questions? Yes, Tom.
So what about, as far as help is concerned, why not just use volunteers to help for some of the things that we have to do with our?
Say that again.
So for people that you need that you want to hire,
Oh.
why not use volunteers to supplement some of those needs?
Thank you very much. I neglected this I neglected this. We have very hardworking volunteers who supervise both the kids and the youth. The youth ministry is very well staffed by volunteers. They do a great job. They will be the first to tell you, though, that they would love to professionalize what happens in both those ministries. So, both the junior high and the high school have fantastic volunteers already working over them. So, we love volunteers like we love nothing else around here. So, and Jesus, yeah. Although it's close. Yeah, but if you see any need that a volunteer could meet, come let us know, and we will make it happen. Yeah, Brad.
All right, so it's not really a budget question, but I'm kind of curious. So Rooftop 2.0,
Thank you. I like 3-point sermons. 3-point questions are, oof. Go ahead.
So, what makes them both rooftop? Will they have shared budget? Like, I know starting off they will have to have that, but eventually we want them to
Yeah.
share or.
Let me just defer that to the 2.0 presentation because that's a good question. Brad has asked how the budgets will work for Rooftop 1.0 and Rooftop 2.0, whether they will be shared or separate. So, good question. We'll answer it later. Oh, was that part one?
Yeah, that was part one.
Okay.
I know you said that we want more staff, so will the staff be over both churches to keep them together?
Another good sub point to your question that we will defer. And your third part?
Thirdly, the ministries, how is that going to work? Are we going to keep like say you have small groups that you go to, will the small groups be combined or will those be separate as well?
I'll just go ahead and answer that one. We're going to try and maintain a strong, healthy relationship with 2.0 as much as possible. And if there are some opportunities for ministries to work together, then we're going to look for those, like maybe a joint Mexico trip or joint events. Small groups might be a little more difficult to join because so many of them are geographically based. So where there are opportunities to cooperate, we're certainly going to look for those. No, we're not. No. Any other budget-related questions? Yeah, Chelsea. Sorry. I have giving trends are really hard to interpret because so many people give with different things in their brain. My personal theory is that February was such a snowy, icy month, and that people kind of caught up with them with their giving in March. But I actually think historically March is pretty high anyway. Eric.
So actually, and Mark, Camille, and I, we always go to breakfast the week before, say over we go out together. But we were talking about that, and something we do see every March is increased giving. We kind of think it's two things. One is maybe people who got a bonus at work corresponding to the end of the last year and try to compensate the way they tax is good, yes, tax is good. So maybe those things.
Any other budget questions? If not, I'm going to give you a moment to, if you're on the voting roster, mark your ballot, approve or disapprove. Also let us know if you're a member of the voting roster, and then pass your ballots to the middle, and the lovely Kelsey Jackson will collect them, and then we'll continue with our meeting in a moment. Okay, I trust that you had an opportunity to submit your ballots. For the second portion of our meeting, I want to give you the lowdown on something that we've acknowledged several times tonight, and something that we're very excited about, the launch of Rooftop 2.0. Now, when the original Truman State CCF crew launched Rooftop way back in 2000, 2001. The intention was always to start another church after this one, and then maybe even another one, and maybe even another one. In fact, in our youthful idealism and ambition, I think at one point we had discussed planting one church every year. How dewy-eyed idealism is destroyed by the realities of ministry. 20 years later, we're finally getting around to it, but hey, better late than never. Now, why were we and are we still so interested in planting a church? I don't want to steal any of Jacob's thunder, but these realities and facts are so important that they just bear repeating. New churches are just the best way of making followers of Christ. Studies have shown that the percentage of people in new churches that are new followers of Christ is always higher in new churches. I mean, this just should not surprise us. Old churches, they turn old, they lose a step, even inadvertently, they lose their commitment to reaching out. We really don't want that to happen to us. We're committed to that not happening to us, but it's just kind of inevitable. New churches have a fire to them. They have a do-or-die mentality. They're much more nimble and able to adapt and adjust to a changing culture. So we're going to do our best to keep Rooftop Prime, Rooftop One, fresh and engaging with the culture, but we're also going to try to think beyond our walls, and we want to support the next generation of Rooftoppers as they embark on the same project that we engaged in 20 years ago. And this is exactly why we hired Pastor Jacob last year. If you're relatively new to Rooftop, you might not know this, but Jacob has not been around forever. He seems wise enough to maybe have been around forever, but he's actually a young pup of a pastor. He arrived last summer, and we decided to hire him to kill two birds with one stone. We wanted another associate pastor because the congregation has grown and we have a lot of needs that we need help meeting. But we also wanted to start thinking about planting a church, and we needed someone to help lead that effort. And in Jacob, we found someone who was remarkably well-suited to the task. He was thinking about planting a church. He literally lives right down the road. He's young, he's eager, he shares our values, if maybe not our sports team affections. What's more, he had already started the process of building a church planting team who themselves were looking to get involved, and we actually hired some of them too. I don't know if you've met Kelsey Jackson in the back counting our ballots, but she's not just a new office assistant, she's actually a worship pastor, and Jacob had previously tapped her to be the worship pastor in the church that he was thinking of starting. So ever since Jacob arrived last summer, the elders, we've been working hard, diligently behind the scenes, trying to make all the decisions we needed to make in order to come up with a church planting plan. After hours of meeting, prayer, even some more arguing, we have enough of the plan decided and finalized that we're comfortable sharing it with you. I'm just going to go ahead and give the microphone over to Jacob, though, who is going to share with you our church / his church planting vision. I am sure that his presentation may not answer all of your questions, although he is, if anything, a remarkably thorough individual. So if it doesn't answer all your questions, we are going to come back up on stage and we'll tag team to answer whatever questions about 2.0 that you have. So welcome to the stage, Jacob Pralo like Hollow.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here tonight and share our vision for church planting. As Pastor Matt said, I haven't been here that long, but I have been here 9 months, and it's been, or almost 9 months, and it's been 9 very fruitful months with lots of praying and thinking and conversing and planning. Now, for those of you who don't know, church planting is something that I have really been thinking about for about 10 years now. 10 years ago this fall, I was at a gap year program in Colorado, and a friend of mine came up to me and she said, "Jacob, I think you'd make a good church planter." And I didn't know what church planting was, so I didn't know if that was a compliment or an insult. But since then, I've really been thinking about church planting. I thought about church planting when I was a college student and I was pre-med. I thought about church planting when I switched over to focusing on youth ministry and working in youth ministry for several years. I continued to think about church planting as I studied to become a college professor. And in 2015, Haley and I were here in St. Louis, and we actually began attending a church plant. And it was a really good experience for us. We really got to understand the ups and the downs of church planting. We got to experience some of the incredible joys that come with being a new church, and also a lot of the hardships that come with being a relatively small and new church. And it was really through that experience, it was through the experience of having many conversations with many people and through much prayer that God made it really clear that I needed to give up my dream of a 6-figure salary as a tenured professor somewhere and follow God's plan for planting churches. And there was a lot that went into that. There was a lot of thinking that went into that. But one of the things that really was impactful for both Haley and I was that as we have grown out of our teenage years and kind of grown as adults, we noticed something really weird. And it was that our peers and our colleagues, the people that we worked with or we went to school with, the people that we had maybe grown up in church with, were in large numbers leaving the church and leaving faith. People that we had spent years in Bible study with suddenly, seemingly, didn't believe in God anymore. I'd run into someone in a coffee shop or follow up with someone on social media, and they'd be like, you know what, we're not going to church anymore. I'm not sure about this God thing. And we'd have friends who'd convert to Islam or Buddhism, but a lot of people, a lot of our friends and peers, just kind of stopped going to church and stopped being anything at all. They just kind of left God. And it really began to break our hearts. And unfortunately, our friends are not outliers. The people that Haley and I know aren't outliers. Young people, it's awkward for me to say that as a young person, young people, the rising generations are leaving faith. They're leaving the church. And that is true of people who grew up in the church and people who maybe just have a little experience with church but aren't committed church people. People are not following God. According to the Barna Foundation and Pew Forum, something like 40% of people aged 30 and under do not have an affiliated religious belief. 40% of people do not claim a religious affiliation. Now, I want to be very clear with what that means. If you don't have a religious affiliation, it's not that you just don't go to church all the time or that you didn't go to church on Easter. People who don't have a religious affiliation don't ever dream of going to church on Easter because God and faith are not at all a part of their worldview. 40% of people in America under the age of 30 are not only unchurched, but they don't even dream of going to church, and they have no idea who Jesus is. That's 40% of my friends. That's 40% of your kids' friends or your grandkids' friends. That's 40% of my 2.5-year-old daughter's friends don't or won't have a religious affiliation of any sort. And the picture is actually darker if you grew up in church, because there are all sorts of metrics out there counting how hundreds of thousands of people who grew up in church, who went to children's ministries, who went to youth groups, when they graduate high school, they walk away. Hundreds of thousands a year. The rising generations are walking away from God, and they're not coming back. They're disillusioned. They're disillusioned with church. They're tired of how we don't love other people. They're tired of our hypocrisy. They're tired of a lot of things, and they walk away and they don't come back. Now, this is all very gloom and doom here, and I am far from the only person to say this. I'm far from the only person to stand in front of a church and say, The rising generations are no longer having a part of what we're doing here. And there are many proposed solutions to this problem, but the solution that is God-honoring and biblical and, as Matt said, statistically effective is planting churches. Planting churches is one of the most effective ways that we know of to reach people with the good news of Jesus when they don't know Jesus. Pastor Tim Keller says it this way. He says, a vigorous and continuous approach to church planting is the only way to guarantee an increase in the number of believers. It is one of the best ways to renew the whole body of Christ. That is, if you want more people to go to heaven and fewer people to go to hell, you should be invested in church planting. Because in America, that is the thing that works. And there are a variety of reasons for that we can talk about in some capacity, but I'll try not to bore you with that right now. And so as Haley and I were in this church plant, as we were learning and growing there, it became pretty clear to us that if we were going to be a part of what God was doing for our peers, for our friends, and for our kids, we really needed to take seriously the importance of church planting, of starting a new church. And over the past 5 years, we've given that a ton of time and energy and prayer. As Pastor Matt said, before we even showed up at Rooftop, we were meeting regularly with a group of people talking about what it would mean to start a church here in St. Louis. And as we thought and prayed, a vision crystallized. And the vision is to plant a church that is a community of conversation for those on the fringes of faith in the rising generations. A community of conversation for those on the fringes of faith in the rising generations. Now, there's a lot there, so I want to unpack that very quickly. A community of conversation. We want to plant a church like Rooftop that is committed to big tent Christianity that lets people from all walks of life come in, where people can bring their hurts and their pains and their experiences and their questions and experience God's goodness and grace. We want to be a community of conversation. And we want to be a community of conversation for those on the fringes of faith. People on the fringes of faith are people who don't go to church, maybe don't follow Jesus, maybe don't know who Jesus is, but have some sort of knowledge of Christianity and God. It's someone who maybe went to a VBS as a kid or went to Catholic school. Maybe they have a Christian coworker. They've heard of Jesus. Those are the people on the fringes of faith. And so we want to be a community of conversation for those on the fringes of faith in the rising generation. And by rising generation, I simply mean millennials and iGen. Millennials are people who are 35 to 20 years old. And I happen to be smack dab in the middle of that group. And iGen is people, which you might also hear iGen referred to as Gen Z. iGens are people who are 20 years old, so people who are in college or beginning their careers, down to very young kids, 0, 1, 2, 3 years old. All right? And so we want to be a church that is a community of conversation for those on the fringes of faith in the rising generation. We want to be we want to plant a church that millennials and iGens love to attend, so that they stop wandering away from God. Because the fact is, we need more churches in this world like Rooftop. There was a visitor here who came on Easter, and get this, she was moving from Southern California to New York, and she planned her move so that she could be here on Easter. She arrived in St. Louis Saturday night, came and worshiped with us at Easter, and then got in her car and continued her move to New York. And as I have been following up with her this week, she has asked me, she said, Jacob, is there any church like Rooftop in New York? She's outside Albany. And I was genuinely curious. So I spent 15 minutes looking at the churches outside of Albany, New York, which is a fairly decent-sized area. And there's nothing. There are churches, there are God-honoring churches that preach the word and are doing good work in the community, but there's nothing that compares to Rooftop. And the fact is, we need more churches like Rooftop in the world. We need more churches that are going to do the work of engaging millennials and iGens. We need more churches that are going to be faithful in proclaiming the truth of who Jesus is and what he has done, while also really being engaging to those people who are the rising generation. And so that is why we are planting a church. Now, I'm sure you have all sorts of questions about this church that we're going to plant. And so to help answer those questions, we've actually got a handout that some wonderful volunteers are going to pass out to you now that helps answer some frequently asked questions about Rooftop 2.0. And as someone very wisely asked already, no, Rooftop 2.0 is not going to be the name of said church. We thought about it for like 2 minutes. All right, these FAQs are going to be up on the screen, and in order to honor your time this evening, if you do not have the handout, it's coming. So what are we doing? We're planting a church. All right? What is the purpose of this church going to be? Well, the purpose of this church is to be followers of Christ, to make followers of Christ, to make followers of Christ. Right? Which, I don't know if you've walked through the lobby entrance to Rooftop, is exactly the reason we meet here as a church as well. What is this church going to believe? Well, on the essentials of Christianity as outlined in Rooftop's statement of faith, the church plant is going to be theologically identical to Rooftop. All right? Rooftop has a really awesome DNA. We're committed to big tent Christianity. We're committed to taking Jesus seriously, but not ourselves. We're committed to being in community with one another and to service. Those are all awesome, amazing things. And insofar as that can be replicated in another church, we are going to do that at 2.0. When are we planting? The goal is to plant with a launch Sunday in September of 2020. That is 17 months from now. And as for where we are planting, I wish I could tell you we're going to be in a specific location, but one of the perils of church planting is locations are hard to find. But we have a range right now. We have a plant zone, it's called. And the plant zone is basically, we're going to plant somewhere on the Missouri 141 corridor between Baldwin and Fenton. Somewhere over there. The green zone. Who will be planting? Well, hopefully some of you. This new church is going to draw on existing rooftoppers to help form its core. If you join 2.0, you will be stuck with me as your lead pastor for a little bit. Hopefully a long bit. I don't know, I've met some of you. It might only be a little bit. And as Pastor Matt mentioned, Kelsey Jackson has been tabbed as worship leader for 2.0 as well. But we're trying to gather a team. We're trying to gather a team of people to come and be a part of this amazing work that we're doing. And the question I'm very often asked already is, what's the relationship going to be between Rooftop 1 and Rooftop 2? And the goal is to plant an independent church. All right? This is sort of a mother-daughter relationship here. All right? We are coming from Rooftop with a lot of the things that make Rooftop distinctive, and we're going to be beginning a new church with the oversight of Rooftop, the Rooftop staff and elders, especially at the beginning, but with the goal of becoming as independent as quickly as possible and as realistically as possible. And on that note, and again, I think Pastor Matt said this, we want to work together on as much as we possibly can for as long as we can, right? We don't want this to be any sort of ill will, oh, we're getting rid of these people, or we're leaving all those poor, sad people behind. What we want to do is we want to work together on missions and on outreach and on leadership training and on a whole host of other things, including, hopefully, Lord willing, planting another church. which I affectionately refer to as Rooftop 3.0. All right, so at this point you're like, okay, Jacob, stop talking. How can I get involved? I wanna get out of my seat and do something. Well, there are 3 ways you can get involved. The first is you can join our prayer team. It's gonna be launching this fall. Planting a church is hard work. We're gonna need a lot of prayer. We're gonna need a lot of support that way, and so I would encourage all of you, when that rolls out, please consider joining the prayer team to be praying for the work that we are doing. The second thing you can do is there are gonna be a lot of practical needs pre-launch. We're gonna need help doing this and help assembling that and help preparing for this sort of thing. And as those needs come about, we're gonna make those available for the Rooftop family to help with. And those are kind of things that I think and I pray that every person who comes to Rooftop can be a part of. Every person can pray for us. Everyone can maybe lend a hand as they are able. But the third thing you can do is a little bit more of an ask. And it's to join the launch team. It's to join the team of people that are going to go begin this church, that are going to go reach these people, that are going to be the key leaders and volunteers at this brand new church that we're planting. And if you want any information about any of those 3 things that you can do, you can contact me. You can talk to me afterwards, email me, text me, stop me on a Sunday. I would love to chat with you. But if you're specifically interested in maybe learning more about the launch team, there are a couple things I would encourage you to do. The first thing is come talk to me. I have a whole lot more about this church I can tell you. Okay? And as the next several months go on, there's going to be even more that I can tell you. The second thing is, if you think maybe you want to be part of Rooftop 2.0, I want to encourage you to think and pray about this, especially over the next several months. This September, we're going to have info nights here at Rooftop, September 15th and September 17th. And we're going to have all sorts of other details, like what we're actually calling this church, and hopefully more specifically where we're going to be, and where we need key volunteers, and where we can use your gifts. We're going to have all of that information this September. So if you are thinking, hey, maybe this is for me, I would encourage you, think about it, pray about it, talk to your spouse, talk to your family, and use this summer as a time to really consider whether this is something that you want to be a part of. And the third thing is, if you think that church planting might be for you, if you talk to me about it, if maybe you live out in the direction we're planting, maybe this is something you've always wanted to do, the third thing I would ask you to do is let the Rooftop elders know. Because moving from one church to another church and doing it well can be very difficult. Proverbs 19:20 says that we should listen to advice and accept instruction, and our Rooftop elders really want to walk with you through the process of potentially leaving Rooftop 1.0 and moving to Rooftop 2.0. They want to meet with you. They don't want to tell you, hey, you need to go, or hey, you shouldn't go, but they want to meet with you and hear what you're thinking and help you discern what is going on. And most importantly, they want to pray for you. They want to pray whether you're staying or whether you're coming to Rooftop 2.0. Because church planting is exciting and awesome, but it's also a lot of hard work. And the Rooftop elders want to equip and send all of us out in a way that is glorifying to God, but also in a way that is potentially successful. So I am super excited about this. I am super excited about that Rooftop's planting efforts are moving forward. It has been an answer to so many prayers, simply to get to know all of you and to be here at Rooftop. But especially to kind of be taking these really concrete steps to be moving forward with Rooftop 2.0. I'm going to invite Matt back up, and we will try to answer any questions that you may have.
Andrew.
Andrew asked, how was the location area decided? I mean, there's only a little bit of that. There's actually a map in my office. No. There were a lot of things that went into that. Need was a big one. Where are there millennials and iGeners who need a church like Rooftop? Also, existing Rooftop footprint. Are there people who live out in this direction? Right? We're not planting in Wentzville because none of you live in Wentzville, even though there's a need for a Rooftop-like church there. And then just lots of prayer and fasting. Lots of me driving around going, yeah, we could probably do this. This looks like a great old Burger King to set up shop in. Yeah, Kim asked, are you going to buy any building? Are you going to buy an old church that's for sale? The quick answer to that is we don't know. We are looking at places as they come available, keeping tabs on a couple older dying churches especially, but it is highly likely, I mean, hint, hint, no, but a reality of church planting is very often it's best to start portable and then transition to a building as you find a building in your area that comes available, right? So not waiting for the building, but going to the place that needs the church and then waiting for God to provide the building.
So would that mean like renting a high school gym or a cafeteria for the Sunday service?
Tom asked, does that mean like renting a high school gym or a cafeteria for a Sunday service? Yes. And there's a whole host of other places we're looking as well. But that sort of a location is definitely on the list.
You pick.
Claire? Are there any other churches in that area that are similar to Rooftop? It depends on what you mean by similar to Rooftop. There are a lot of things about Rooftop that are very distinctive. And I obviously don't know everything, but in my experience at a lot of different churches, there are a lot of things we have here at Rooftop that I have not experienced in other places at all. And so in that sense, no, there are no other churches like Rooftop here. But there are churches, right? And so this gets us into an area that we have to be very careful. We need to tread very carefully, right? You don't want to plant next to another church because you don't want to be in direct competition with them, right? We don't need to sheep steal. We actually just want to reach other people who need to know Jesus, right? And something like 70% of St. Louis did not go to church last week. So there are plenty of people who need Jesus who we can find. So you don't want to plant right next to someone, but again, there are lots of opportunities. Funny story. As we're thinking about names, Haley and I have been talking about what could this possibly be named, and we thought, we went to a church planting conference at Radiant Church. That's a really cool, hip name. I like Radiant Church. Are there any churches like that in St. Louis? Well, yes, as a matter of fact, there's a church that started 3 months ago in Fenton named Radiant Church. So, a little late to the game, but, and again, they're new, they're not quite like us, but there's definitely still, there's many, many people who still need to meet Jesus in this area. Yes, in the back. Ariel. Ariel is asking, if you want to make Rooftop theologically identical, why do you want to change the name? Because there's a whole lot more than theology that goes into the inner workings of a church. Yeah. For one, just to speak to this for a moment, our target audience is going to be a little different. We're located here in Afton at Rooftop. We're very Afton-centered. We're obviously going to be centered somewhere else with the church plant, but also we're going to have a very specific target audience as well.
I will also add to that, if I may, we intentionally decided to, on the mother-daughter model, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the concept of churches with sites, different locations. There are several churches with different site locations here in St. Louis, and they all have the same name because they all represent the same branding. We decided against that model so that we can separate and in our minds, at least, in our opinion, the healthiest church is an independent church that grows up to become its own self. So naming itself is part of that process of independence. Nikki has had her hand up a while.
Sorry, Nikki.
Considering the target people or the IGNs and the millennials, and that Kelsey's going to be worship, which is awesome, will off the bat, will women be allowed to be elders this year?
So, Nikki is asking the all-important question that you all came in here with tonight. Are women going to be allowed to be elders? One of the reasons that our current Rooftop elders discerned the value of planting an independent church, right? Not a rooftop with the same name as a site model, is because they wanted to give this church the opportunity to discern those sorts of questions on their own, with current elder oversight, of course, but to be able to make those decisions as well, as a plant as well. And so the short answer to that is probably over the next couple of months that will be solidified. There, when Pastor Matt planted Rooftop, he had what he called your A-team.
A-team.
The advisory team who kind of came alongside him and helped work on some of the logistical things. There's also an advisory team for 2.0. And over the summer months, we're going to be nailing down a lot of things like name and location that are very logistics-based, but also some of those more fundamental, who is going to be leading, what is the role of women going to be in this church. And so I cannot answer with certainty at this point, because I want to respect that team and the answers that come out of that team. However, it's very probable.
What is the plan to target that specific audience for that church to get them to come to the church?
So Jen is asking, what is the specific plan to target that specific audience to get them to come to that church? There's a lot of different things, from where we are, how we advertise, word of mouth, the way that services look, the way that the things that we do, right? Outreach in the community looks different based on your audience and things like that. So there's a whole host of things of that nature. Again, our goal is to take Rooftop's DNA and replicate that as much as possible. But when you change audiences, there are certain tweaks that get made. So we'll be making those. But precisely what those are, I cannot tell you right now. Colleen.
With Kelsey following you to 2.0, is there a plan for another admin instead?
No. But we know exactly when she's going to be leaving, and we'll have enough time to advertise and plan a little better than we have in the past because of some of the more sudden departures. So, good question.
Mary.
Do you have plans to share office space for a while at the beginning?
Mary's asking if we have plans to share office space for a while at the beginning. That kind of depends on if Jeremy gets sick of me or not. That is on the table. We do not have any solid leads on that currently. Diane.
You've mentioned a couple times that Rooftop is unique. What are a couple of things that you see as being?
There are very few, sorry, Diane asked, what is unique about Rooftop? What are some of the things we see that are unique? I have not seen a commitment to we call it big tent Christianity, or C.S. Lewis uses the term mere Christianity, functionally in a church like it works here. I have been looking for that for like 15 years, and it's a short amount of time, but I've been looking fairly hard, and the way it is expressed and works out here is extremely unique. So to me, that's the foundation upon which a lot of other uniqueness is built. But a lot of our values, taking Jesus seriously, but not ourselves, being so engaged in the community, our approach to making decisions as a church. Again, maybe not completely unique on their own, but when combined together, it really makes Rooftop unique. Salita. Yeah. So Salita's asking, when you came up here the first time, you told us we were all not welcoming. Have you seen any improvement in that?
I just want to commend Salita's memory from the last
that's really
Data
good.
Verse meeting.
So I'm a big data and analytics guy, right? I like collecting information, and so we ask all of our guests how their first time here was. When I meet with people for coffee as connections pastor, I'm always trying to hear how we're doing and do what's better, and I think we're doing a better job. There was actually someone I spoke to yesterday who tried Rooftop a year ago and did not make it through her second service here because we were not friendly to her, and came back on Easter and was blown away at how different we are. So you are all to be commended for that. I'm sure we can all do better, but those are the sorts of things that I've seen, even in my 9 months here, that tells me that the people of Rooftop are ready to send out another church.
To Jacob's credit, he has done an amazing job focusing on that, emphasizing that. I'm confident that he's going to take that spirit with him on this planet as well. So thanks for your work.
Any other substantive questions or comments? Yes, Kevin.
Is there like a minimum number or a threshold size for the launch team to make it work?
Yeah, Kevin's asking, is there a minimum size or threshold for the launch team to make it work? The bigger the launch team, the better chance a church plant has of being successful. There are all sorts of metrics out there on churches that have X number of people 3 months in, have a 90% survivability rate. There are all sorts of things like that. Basically, we would really like to have a launch team of no fewer than 40 people and a first Sunday kind of core of no fewer than 100. Those are really good benchmarks to aim for a church plant's viability long term.
So, based upon that, Matt, how, if, so 40 or 50 people leave Rooftop here and move, Jacob, how is that going to affect the economics here?
Tom's asking a good question. How will the departure of potentially 40 people to the launch team affect the economics around here? It will hit those economics. We will have less money coming in. So we'll just have to budget accordingly. Yeah. So I answered the question the exact way that you expected I would. Yeah. Well, you're a smart guy. You could have figured that out. Saved us a few minutes. Yeah. So we will have to deal with that reality. And it gets to the question of hiring a replacement. We really won't know if we're going to be able to until we get closer to the point at which we launch this team. Will we have the economics to be able to hire an associate pastor? If not, how will we handle that? How will we shift responsibilities to make sure we keep doing the great job in connections, for example, that Jacob is doing? How are we going to maintain that?
Maybe you won't need to buy the parking lot of 50 people.
Well, we still have visions beyond. I mean, we're not like dying. when we launched this church. We still want to keep growing. So I know.
You mentioned the 40% of the people are not involved in churches.
Yes.
Have you been able to identify why they're not involved in churches? And is there a plan how we can reach those people?
So David is asking, there's the 40% of people who are not involved in churches. Do we know why, and what is the plan to engage them? So Pew Forum does a really good job of breaking these sorts of questions down every year, and there are kind of 3 reasons that are consistently towards the top of that research as to why people 30 and under are not attending a church or invested in any sort of faith life. And there's no practical value to me. There's no perceived value in going to church. It's not going to help me. It's lack of transparency and authenticity in church leadership, right? Why would I go here? These people are stealing money and they're covering up all these scandals and things like that. And the third thing just totally ran out of my mind, but there's one other thing that people consistently mention, and it's gone. If you need to know that, I'll tell you later. Thank you. But the way to approach that, right, as we talk about pretty much every Wednesday night, is through relationships, right? And building relationships with people who do not yet follow Jesus to help them learn to follow Jesus. And so equipping a church to be good disciples, fundamental part of that. Building or outreach events like Colleen does here to bring people from the community into engagement with the church. I mean, the sorts of things we do a pretty good job of here at Rooftop are kind of the starting point for the way to engage that 40% of people.
Let's take 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, David.
So, money notwithstanding, the people that want to plant a new church obviously are wanting to be leaders. So if we're having trouble stacking all of our ministries here, when we lose a bunch of leaders, what are we going to do about the leadership gaps here?
An excellent question, David, if I may. David asks, what are we going to do about our existing leadership gaps and future leadership gaps when the core team, launch team, leaves? We are trying to actually anticipate that, which is, I don't know if you've heard about the Rooftop Leadership Institute. RLI for short. It's a new opportunity for current potential leaders to grow in their leadership abilities. We recognized, when we decided to plant a church, we recognized that Rooftop isn't necessarily in the ideal position to plant a church. I mean, in a perfect world, we just have so many people and so many leaders and so much money, we don't know what to do with it, let's go start another congregation. That never happens, except like 1 in every 1 million church plants. We have a deficit of leadership here and even some funding limitations. We're just not going to let that stop us from doing what Jesus sends his people out into the world to do. Jesus doesn't say, hey, go plant a church if you're in a position to do so and everything's going well for you. He says, hey, go spread the gospel, go plant a church. Now, we do want to ask the question, what do we need to do to put ourselves in the best position to make this possible? And there's 3 things. We've identified 3 things that we need to do in order to make sure this works well. 1, keep doing what we're doing. Commit ourselves to our big 6 values: teaching, worship, evangelism, community service, prayer. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job at it. Secondly, more discipleship. We want to keep growing Christians in all sorts of ways. That's why we've shifted Jeremy over to some discipleship ministries. His Summit series is on the books. We're excited about that. And then thirdly, do whatever you can to cultivate more leaders. Raise up, or empower existing leaders and raise up future leaders. So we're trying to do that at every opportunity. The RLI, Rooftop Leadership Institute, is one of the ways that we hope to equip people, not to just help him lead stuff, but fill existing gaps and future gaps here right now. So that's our plan. Good question. One more.
Brad.
So we thought about doing, like, whenever we moved to this building, we did a campaign to help raise funds for the move. Have we thought about doing something like that for funding for this?
We have discussed it. We haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, because capital campaigns can be very complicated things. But as of right now, there's no plan in the works.
Rooftop 2.0 will be doing its own independent fundraising as well, outside of the funds that the elders have very generously allocated towards this.
All right, Brad gets the last question of the evening. But if you have any additional questions, you're out of luck. You will never get another opportunity to ask any of those questions to anybody at any point. No, Jacob will be around and available to answer any of those questions. So will the elders. Speaking of elders, I want to invite the elders up on stage here. We are past our time, but we do want to give you the opportunity, at least for a couple minutes, to ask anything you might ask of us. We want to be an open community of leaders for you. If you have questions, if you have issues you want to talk to us about, here's an opportunity. Or if you need to get home and you don't have the time. Greg Cook is also an elder. Let's welcome him to the stage. It got cut off in the text box. Right, yeah, it's below the text box. So this is the team of godly guys who are called to lead Rooftop. We really like to make ourselves available to anybody for whatever questions they might have about the church. We're here to pray for you. We're here to support you. We want to get everybody on stage so that you at least know who we are. So before we leave and pray for the evening, does anybody have any questions, final questions, that you want to ask any of these individuals? Andrew.
Back on the topic of youth intern, you kind of mentioned the terms intern and pastor interchangeably tonight. Is there one plan over the other?
Andrew asks, is there a plan? I've used the term intern and youth pastor somewhat interchangeably. Are those two different plans? Right now, we're looking for an intern. If at some point we have the resources to hire a youth pastor, that would be ideal. But right now, the plan is look for an intern.
But we're still kind of generally looking for additional staff. We haven't necessarily decided specifically on a youth pastor. We want to leave it open for whatever God
that's a good
calls us
nuance.
to.
We haven't officially decided. Youth pastor, if we have the resources.
Did I say something funny? Okay, good. Whew. I said something very serious and people started laughing.
40-point font, yeah. So if we have the resources, then we'll have to make that decision of what do we want to hire. Jeff, in the back. Here's the reality, everybody. We don't have the resources to even get to that point. We haven't even gotten to the point of deciding what would we do if we had $75,000, because we don't. Again, up to you. Anybody else? Nikki.
Would allowing women to be elders in our church require really just elders or the whole congregation? How does that work?
Elder President.
It would require, and I'm going to flip-flop the ratio because I don't remember it. It's written in our bylaws. It's stated as, what's that? Yeah, well, I believe it's a 3/4 vote of the existing elder team and a 2/3 vote of the voting roster.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's essentially a bylaw change, right? So any bylaw change has that same threshold.
Any others? Thank you very much for staying longer tonight. We've got plans. We're excited about it. We thought we would spend a little bit more time talking about them this evening. I want to reiterate this. If you have any other follow-up questions, we want to be an open team. We are here for you. We are here to support and pray for you however we can. We actually get frustrated that more people don't ask us questions or ask us for prayers that do. So we are more than willing to bend over backwards to accommodate your needs however we can. So a couple events I want to draw your attention to real quick, and then we'll close in prayer. Night of Worship, May 4th. Woo-hoo. Summit Series, Part 2. Jeremy's doing scheduling some discipleship events. We're excited about that. That's coming up May 10th. Mother's Day Brunch, May 12th. VBS, get this on your calendars. We really need you to volunteer. Tom is really interested in volunteering for VBS. Aaron, sign him up. That's June 24th. Hey, you brought up the issue of volunteer. This is how it happens. And then we already talked about Rooftop Leadership Institute. If you're interested in leadership in any capacity, then let me know and we'll hook you up with that. Paul Mueller is going to close us in prayer. And as we always do at our State of the Roof meetings, if you would, over the coming next week or so, take a day, fast and pray for the things that we've discussed. It's just a regular opportunity for God's people here at Rooftop to pray and fast together over God's work here at the Kingdom of Rooftop. So, Paul Mueller, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, Kelsey sent me the results. 62 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. So another close approval of the budget.
We can buy bagels and stuff on
Yeah,
Sunday,
we
so
can.
good. Dear God, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to meet here tonight. We talked about numbers. We talked about plans. We talked about names, identity, ages, demographics. But God, we really want to dedicate all of that conversation, all of that talk, all of those plans to you, because we want to create space for people that don't know you to come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. That's why we're doing this. That's why any of these plans are being considered, thoughtfully prayed over, and proposed, is that we want to create space for people to hear about, come to a saving knowledge of you, and be in relationship with you. God, you know who those people are. Send them to us. We want to be faithful. We want to be faithful in proclaiming who you are to the people in St. Louis and in this region that need to know it. And Lord, we just ask for your guidance and your strength and your wisdom and your spirit to guide that endeavor, because without it, we will not succeed. And Lord, we offer all of that up to you tonight in Jesus' holy name. And the church said, amen.
Thank you for coming, everybody. See you Sunday.